Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Dingjo Curry, Director of LIFT, Leadership Institute for Tomorrow. On behalf of the California Community College Chancellor's Office, welcome to our Classified Professional and Career Advancement webinar series. Now, today's webinar is presented with live captions, so it is available should you want to use it. And thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to invest in your personal and professional growth. Congratulations for being here. I want to tell you just a little bit about our Leadership Institute in case you've never heard of LIFT. It was established to serve the needs of emerging leaders of community colleges. And we especially target to address the needs of diverse first generation, new and entry-level professionals in the system. We're very privileged to collaborate with the California Community College Chancellor's Office in producing this webinar series to enhance the leadership capacity and competency of our classified professionals in this particular webinar series. Our webinars are equally beneficial to faculty and administrators too. If our vision is to have all of our students succeed, then it's going to take our entire community college village. So I want to quickly review our California's vision for student success goals that we have set out for ourselves. One is, of course, increase the percentage of students annually who complete associate degrees, credentials, certificates, or specific skill sets, and increase the number of students transferring by 35% annually. To reduce the average number of units accumulated for students earning associate degrees, and to increase the career and technical education programs completers and reporting that they are employed in the field that they're trained in. And number 5 is reduce the equity gaps and faster improvements across all of those measures among our underrepresented students. And number 6 is to reduce the achievement gaps across all those measures and the faster improvements among colleges that's located in regions with the lowest educational attainment results. Those goals are the reasons for our why. The Chancellor's Office is committed to provide the support needed to enhance your leadership capacity and to also enhance our competency so that we can help our students succeed by having you succeed first. This particular series of webinars are informed and inspired by our classified professionals' own responses to the DEI Professional Development Needs Assessment survey results that was completed in 2022. We want to acknowledge the support and the guidance of California Community College Classified Senate, 4CS, and the California School Employees Association, CSEA. I want to thank you for being a good partner with the Chancellor's Office and with us, LIFT. If you ever want to know where to find good talents to grow on your campus, look to the classified professionals. The seedlings are there for you to nurture and to grow them. And the mature trees are also there. Pick the lower hanging fruits for talents right on your campus among the classified professionals. And if you're joining us today as classified professionals yourself, we hope you'll share your learnings with your colleagues. And if you're not a classified professional, I especially applaud you for coming in. I'm certain you will also have takeaways to share with your colleagues. So today's topic is, how can I stand up to injustice and inequity? An extremely important topic. And I don't pretend that we'll cover all of our grounds in a short hour, but we sure hope that by the end of the hour, you will have takeaways. So we're going to cover a lot of grounds very quickly. And you might ask, I hope not, but if you ask, why is this topic so important? Because it's aligned with our community college value as a system. If we want everyone to thrive and succeed, let's make sure our environment is one that breeds fairness, equity for all. We chose this topic because classified professionals are more often than not the group who experiences such inequities on campus. We want to acknowledge that, and we want to do something about it. And so I have an excellent lineup on the panel today. Let me introduce them to you. Dr. Cecil Chick, the Interim Assistant Vice President, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program at Cal State Fullerton. And next, we have Professor of English, Professor Ebony Tyree, San Diego City College, and Dina Pellet. She is the Marketing, Communications, Web, and Multimedia Specialist, multi-talented from Moorpark College. And she is also the Communications Officer of 4CS. And joining us also from Las Positas College, David Rodriguez is their research analyst, and David is also the representative of Area F of 4CS. I'm just so happy you can join us today. Welcome, panelists. So let's start talking about how we go about recognizing injustice and inequity. How might injustice and inequity look like for the classified professionals in their spheres of work? I turn to our panel to shed some light on that. How might injustice and inequity look like for classified professionals in their spheres of work?
Well, when we raise awareness of what people go through, we can then focus on how to be more inclusive. So I thank you for making space to do just that. And I want to share something our VP of Academic Affairs, John Forbes, shared with me. It's some insight. He said it's a challenge walking through hard conversations, and it takes boldness to speak up. It takes additional maturity and awareness to pause when speaking up and check in with others in the conversation. When addressing injustice, bias, and inequity, we need to create a safe space that is open for input. And Dr. Curry, that's what you have done here. And so great minds think alike. And I also want to add that I spoke to people from multiple campuses to set the examples that I'm going to describe. Our classified professionals, the most diverse workforce in higher ed system, needs space to be our best selves. We create community and are fully vested in our students and our colleagues. We are innovative and we love to collaborate. And in that spirit, we deserve every opportunity to be our best selves. So when instances of injustice and inequity occur, it undermines not only our ability to do our job, it affects our health and our well-being. Some of this could include demeaning remarks or unreasonable criticism, dismissive comments, or a lack of clarity on roles and responsibilities, which really stress us out. So some of the people I talked to even said that they experience feelings of isolation, depending upon, where they work on campus. And I like to say that access equals success. So, not being included in key meetings or discussions or denied release time for professional development and campus happenings and so forth lacks inclusivity. So, we know that faculty have flex days, but classified don't. There are behavioral injustices like taking credit for someone's work or making impossible demands or imposing unreasonable deadlines and so forth. And retaliation, which is something that I experienced personally, and it took a big toll on me. And this was before I came to Moorpark College. And this often happens when someone decides to speak out against offenses. And that, is what I did, and that's what happened to me. So if retaliatory practices go unchecked, it takes a huge toll on one's self-esteem and one's overall health. And it also chills others from being able or feeling like they can come forward. And so therefore it creates a work culture that adversely affects pretty much everyone. Microaggressions, another thing that people brought up with me. Through comments in meetings or passing conversations or emails. Bias is rooted so deeply that one doesn't even know they have it until it comes up in conversation. You know, whether conscious or unconscious, these biases are harmful. I think somebody described it once as death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Mm.
And, you know, lastly, I think there are some absolutely wonderful administrators who really get it. And I serve with deans and executive colleagues and on committees and work groups and projects, and they're awesome, like some of the people in this room, right? But then there are those that just don't have good people skills. You know, they lack compassion, they lack team building experience. And then there are even worse cases where, you know, someone has a really high employee turnover because of poor treatment or unreasonable expectations, or they're verbally abusive. I know this is hard to hear and it's really hard to talk about. So I'm going to end my dialogue with a Rumi quote, and that is, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind?
Thank you, Dina, for that. I want to add, of course, that along with everything that Dina said, you know, it also looks like not listening to or acknowledging classified professionals when they have input or suggestions for structure and how things should go. You know, there's no one better than to tell you how to do things than the person doing it. And encountering those, that whatever it is that they're trying to adjust every day. So I also think our classified professionals are met with folks who are implementing either practices or policies that could run counter to what they actually experience on a daily basis. And so I think that one way to maybe close some of those inequities is meaningful dialogue, right, with classified professionals to managers, administrators, and faculty, to hear one another and look for ways and suggestions that classified professionals could be suggesting we practice in some way. And so I think that the hierarchies, right, and ideas about positions and I guess value of information is certainly, I think, a way in which our classified professionals experience inequities and injustices. You know, many of our colleagues and the folks we work with have other skill sets and expertise. They're not just the person that sits at the desk doing that one job. Have we ever inquired to see what else they are able to do, what their degrees are, what their interests are, and taking that into account? And so I think not listening to the voices of our classified professionals, especially when it comes to work structure, policies, and procedures. That's my 2 cents.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that Ebony and Dina mentioned, hierarchies and sometimes some tough work relationships and dynamics that occur. It really create injustices and inequities. I start from the point that classified professionals and probably a lot of people who signed on to this webinar, you guys play a key role in both sustaining our institution and caring for our students and helping them through their journey. And that's, I was a classified Senate president at my college a few years back, and I did a survey of, I'm a research analyst, so I did a survey and surveyed our classified, and I was trying to put together values, and I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was just really motivated by how often it was, I am the value that I see in working here is that I get to see students succeed, that I get to be part of their success. And that just emboldened me as a Senate president to just like advocate for them, because I saw how much passion they had for the students, and how the role that they played in the institution. And so when we see injustices and inequities happening to certain groups or throughout, it often is due to imbalances, in my opinion, that in our conversations, in the lack of conversations that we're willing to have as an institution. And so the way that I've seen injustice and inequity sort of pop up for classified professionals is oftentimes sidelining. So whether it's structural or even behavioral, there's all this sense of, sometimes it's not intentional, but it's like, oh, I didn't realize this impacted you. And these are institution-wide conversations, but it's like, oh, well, I didn't know you were interested. Well, sometimes they didn't know they were interested because they didn't know that it was going on, right? And so sometimes it looks like unbalanced governance structures where committees don't have enough seats for classified, or classified aren't able to attend regularly and be informed, right, and actively participate in them. Sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes it is. It's limited information. I know. So sometimes like there's a lot of things that our lives are busy, right? Our workloads are busy, and sometimes it's meant to be kind in the sense like, I don't want you to worry about all these other things. I want you to work on your work stuff, but those conversations are also part of our work. It's part of the coming together around our students. And sometimes those conversations decisions end up being made that now need to be implemented by the experts, and the experts were never in the room, sometimes, and so going into that, limiting participation, sometimes it's limited for classified professionals. And that sort of leads to inequities where sometimes it's reduced resources. A lot of classified professionals who are in shared governance or in a lot of roles volunteer, and it's on top of the work that they do. And many times, because of various reasons, and part of it is a lack of classified voice, it does lead to understaffing of certain areas. And that goes, it leads into changing, one of the main things that I've heard from classified professionals throughout my leadership and governance is I don't even want to go into committee because that's going to mean more work for me, and I'm not like, the more I start identifying problems, the more they're going to be put on my desk to put. And it's a perverse sort of system sometimes that we start creating, because then people are actively disincentivized through that process to try to find solutions. They're like, no, I see the problem, but I'm not going to address it because then it's going to be my problem. And, as we sort of open up these conversations, it allows us to try to find fair ways for us to have those conversations and get input and try to find institution-wide solutions that don't overburden a certain group. I think coercion and manipulation sometimes happens, where I think it was mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, there is some, sometimes it looks like undermining classified people's work. I wouldn't even put it on classified, but I've heard it in classified areas. Sometimes a little sort of like, oh, you spoke up. And so then you start getting more work, and then
We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that
Yeah.
speaking up part very quickly.
Yeah, and so definitely a lot of things that it can look in a lot of different ways, but I think there is also a lot of support, and so there's opportunities for us to speak up.
Yeah, so I 100% agree. And I think for me, the missing component is also recognizing that when we look at our classified staff members, we have to look at them holistically, right? They're not just an employee to do right, complete a task, right? It's not just administrative assistant. If you look at many college campuses, institutions, any workplace culture, a lot of our classified staff members come from marginalized communities. Right. So inherently, there is already a system that creates opportunities that are just not meant for many of our classified staff members to participate. So I'm thinking about cultural capital, political capital, navigational capital, right? All of those things are not inherently taught. And from what my colleagues have shared, right, are intentionally kept out of, right, conversations for many of our classified members to find upward mobility, right, to gain professional development, to learn the skills, right? We see I think in the media a lot, right? We have a tendency to dehumanize, right? Treat classified staff members, secretaries, assistants, right? You see it, hello, Devil Wears Prada, right? Like we see it and we glorify it, right? In those movies. And so it happens in real life, right? And we live in a society that perpetuates the idea that it's okay to do those things. But I think it's also important to highlight that many of our classified professionals in many institutions of higher education come from marginalized communities, and many of them might be alumni of the institution, right, that graduated from, right, because they want to give back. It meant something to them, right? They believe in the ability for access and success, so they keep coming back for more. So we have to be intentional about how we provide our classified staff members, not just those hard skills, but those soft cultural skills necessary to navigate success within the institution of higher education.
Great. And we're going to get to that skill. So you give me a good lead in. Well, I think that first question was right on target what you have said. And I think that's almost like that's the life of classified professionals, and who needs to hear it is anybody but the classified professionals to really come to a different kind of awareness. So I thank you for that. You know, many of our classified professionals serve students directly, and if not directly, they're everywhere on campus and they intersect with a lot of policies as well. So I want to kind of ask your attention to how classified professionals intersect with students and the topic of injustice and inequity. So what are injustices and inequities that the classified professionals may come across with regard to students or, you know, in institutional policies? If you just briefly give us some examples, that would really be very helpful.
Yeah, I think sometimes with regards to students, I think sometimes it's a lot of times our processes take way too long, you know, and especially that impacts a lot of our marginalized students, because they have to go from work to class, you know, being in long waiting lines or waiting for that hold to be cleared. Sometimes they're juggling already a lot of things, right? Sometimes it's an unwelcoming environment. There's a lot of trauma in certain from some backgrounds, and sometimes people are sensitive to the like unwelcome environments in which, you know, like people are busy and then they don't look at a student. You know, this is before even registering into class, and so and sometimes it's a lack of flexibility for how various background connected to that. A lot of various backgrounds or trauma impact the students and how that changes how they see their interaction with all these processes, with all these things, business things that we have to do. And it can create a lot of stumbling blocks for a lot of first generation students and minoritized students. And that can be also on the registration issues, but it can also be sometimes when they deal with some heavier topics in Title IX and stuff like that, where we might, students might be impacted by this, and not all students are coming from the same vantage point. So we need to really consider how those policies and processes really are serving our students. And as classified professionals, how can we advocate to change some of those things? You know, and in classified, I think we already spoke on it, but I'll just say, like, release time to be able to participate and being able to close their offices to attend college-wide conversations. It's like we need bandwidth sometimes. It seems to just be able to be part of the conversations, and so in order to address some of these things that we see our students struggling with, and we sometimes struggle with as well. One last thing that and this is a very hard, but I'll keep it brief. It's selectively applying our values. So sometimes we have really great equity conversations on one end, but then when we talk about some things, we don't embed that conversation of assessing how these policies might roll out, and how when we're thinking about implementing them, how not just looking at the overall picture, but looking like, is this going to adversely impact some groups more than others, and should we still move forward with it, or should we reconsider, you know? And yeah, that's all.
Yeah, so I think in terms of injustice and inequities, right, that our classified staff members might bump up against in terms of like institutional policies, I don't think we're very intentional about our desire and our dedication, I'm going to go with, in providing professional development to our classified staff members, right? Just like one very small snippet in terms of mentorship, developing their cultural and political capital, but to understand, right, the hierarchy of higher education, the hierarchy of the structure of the organization, so they're in better position to navigate it, right? We talk a lot about how our students are first generation, so we want to provide them navigation capital, right? We have a lot of classified members who are also, right, who were first generation students, and now this is their first position, right? So also teaching them and developing their professional identities, right? And I think that's something that is such an easy win that our institutional policies can think about how we restructure resources in terms of finances and time, as we talked about flex time, right? In service days that are intentionally geared towards developing classified staff members.
Well, thank you all for that. That's awesome. You know, there is something that I think that our students crave, especially students at risk, and that's meaningful two-way dialogue and access to people on an immediate basis. And one of the things that we have going on at Will Park College is we've created a two-way texting channel. So we are literally having a one-on-one dialogue in key areas, counseling, help with enrollment, help with EOPS, and so forth and so on. And up until we instilled that, our students were just desperately reaching out and not getting the answers they need, or making phone calls and so forth. So I think some of you mentioned mentoring, and what we're doing is training our students to hold this dialogue. So we train them so it's students mentoring students in meaningful ways. So that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to just mention is that, you know, we talked about microaggressions, right? Well, there's something called micro-invalidation. And micro-invalidation is like, well, racism doesn't exist, or, well, you know what, I don't even see color, right? Those are micro-invalidations. And so the fact of the matter is that we do have people who simply don't embrace the idea of social justice and anti-racism. And now we're dealing with anti-wokeness in our prospective communities. And do you realize that we have students who are like asking for anti-woke professors? I mean, my gosh. Think about it, like a queer and BIPOC students having to share space with people who don't get it. So that's something where we need to better educate, better advocate, right? And the last thing I want to talk about is queering our campus community, doing a better job at queering our campus community, and being a better support to our LGBTQ plus students and staff. And you know, Moore Park does that very well with advocacy, safe zone training, health programs, and so forth. So those are some things that, you know, I can think about.
So I agree with all of that, of course, but I actually want to back up a little bit to that first question, because one thing I wanted to say, Cecil was also talking about the cultural capital and the things that our classified professionals bring. Yeah, so pay them. Look at your pay scale. What's the inequities there? What's the skill set? I believe that when I was hired as a classified professional, it didn't matter degrees, experience. That was just the pay rate for that role. However, you're not looking at, like Cecil said, looking holistically at that person. So I think classified professionals need to get paid for the skill sets that they have based on the experience and or degrees that they have as well, just like in other areas of education. So I just want to say that money too, make it match with the work that they do, because they are the backbone of the campus. And without them, we wouldn't be able to run. So where's your value, right? Like they say, put your money where your mouth is. So up the pay scale. I just need to say that. The other thing in regards to inequities and encountering students, especially at my campus, our students are struggling every day, housing insecurities, food insecurities, all of those things, right? And then they come into our spaces looking for, some hope, right? How do I move forward? What do? I want to make my life better. And many of the people they encounter first are classified professionals, who many of them can identify with those students, right? They feel for them. They want to help them. Running around trying to figure out, well, where do I get this paper and how do I do it? I remember so many times looking at the law and figuring out, how can I tell this student yes? Because I don't want them to walk out of here. However, if our classified professionals are overworked, too much of a load, we're saying, do all these, show up for our students, be equitable. But if they're not given access to the professional development and they're constantly having additional work dumped on their desk, I might not be the happiest when a student comes in because I have all these other things. So I think that also has to be considered. You cannot put the cart before the horse. If we want our classified professionals to show up for our students who are experiencing challenges, we also have to acknowledge the challenges that our classified professionals are experiencing, and not just acknowledge them, but find ways to mitigate them so that they can show up the way that they want to show up in the space and to help those students. That's all. Pay them and give them the resources.
Thank you. I looking at the time and look at that. This is a huge topic, and it does no justice that we should have been a double feature. So I'm going to turn into how-tos now. So Dina and David, as classified professionals yourself in your 4CS leadership roles, you must have come across many of those challenges that you talked about. So let's turn to how-to. How can our classified professionals overcome some of those challenges that they intersect with injustice and inequity? And what tools or channels do you have to offer?
Well, one of the challenges, of course, is navigating a traditional hierarchical management climate where information just is not easily shared. And we've talked about this. Everybody's talked about this. But it's probably one of the areas that's most important. So by enabling us to be more a part of the conversation, we're going to have a much more creative, and this is a way to have a creative solution. I have a friend who said there are two kinds of people in life, either victims or creatives. So let's just be creatives in this space, right? And earlier I talked about John Forbes. He stated that we need to make space on committees and in group interactions and so forth. And we need to do more in advocating protocols to exist where everybody can give their opinions. Again, it goes back to access equals success, right? And so shared governance, right? That is like one of the most strongest tools that classified have in their toolbox. Shared the ability to sit on committee, to be part of the shared governance process as their pathway to leadership, as their pathway to making the changes that they want to see in the world. And that's one thing about 4CS. It's just so awesome. We are an advocate for inclusion in governance. We support active participation in professional development. And our tagline is, dedication, leadership, and advocacy, right? So we have workshops, and in fact we have our leadership institute coming up, and I believe Lyft has a leadership institute coming up, and these are awesome opportunities to learn how to be a leader. Because if you want to empower yourself, and if you want to be heard, being a leader, learning how to lead is one of the best ways to do that. We do that with our students, and we do it very well. And we know as experts, we can move forward, with the creativity that we talked about. At Moore Park College, Dr. Julius has open door policy where anybody can go into his office during certain hours and talk about anything that they need to. And I mean, what better way to make your voice heard if you have an issue? Again, access equals success, right? And overall, I just think we need more campus-wide professional development for classified staff. Most of our pro dev is geared towards faculty, and they get things like, flex days and stuff where, classified doesn't, we don't have flex days, and often we're not even able to attend their professional development because, as David said before, we had too much work to do, right? So again, I'm going to go back to what John said because I love it. He said it takes boldness to speak up, right? So use your 4CS tools. We're bringing IEPC, Caring Campus, to our campuses. That's another thing 4CS is doing. And don't be afraid to stand up, okay? There are steps that you can take, and I just know that there are leaders like Julius and John and people in this room who could be agents for change on your behalf. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to go there.
Yeah, I think I'll start where I think I was going to end in this section with you have more support than what you think. I think one of the things that great about I think our community colleges is that when we're able to sit down, I think we're able to talk and be very supportive. I think sometimes it doesn't connect with other things. So I found that when I speak up in a committee, I'm not like right away, told that you can't talk, So as much as possible, don't be afraid to develop your voice. I know that sometimes our hierarchical structures are intimidating, and there's a lot of things that we feel we don't know. I felt like that when I stepped into classified leadership, and it seems daunting at times. But I think if you take it, just build relationships and start to reach out to other classified, start getting involved, and some of the things that you can do to start overcoming and addressing these inequities is realize that you are an expert in what you do, right? And a lot of classified professionals have the institutional history and have a long-term stake in the success of the institution that maybe other constituent, like administrators sometimes come and go, but classified are usually holding up the processes and holding up keeping the college running. So I encourage you to develop your voice, and Dina mentioned a few things of ways to do so. Take advantage of leadership institutes like CLI and Lyft, and inform yourself. Other aspect is the idea of collegial consultation, which is embedded in all of our community colleges, is one in which it should be inclusive, and it values input in order to make from various expertise and vantage points, and that includes classified professionals, in order to develop better solutions, outcomes as solutions. Look into classified 9+1, which is just outlining certain areas that classified should be able to participate in. Work with other classified professionals and work with your unions to address workplace challenges. Work together with other classified professionals. I've seen that work be very valuable, and find common cause and start advocating for changes. One plug is a local leadership or academy is such a great thing. We developed one in our district and it's now in our 8th cohort. I want to thank our Vice Chancellor in Human Resources who worked with classified leaders to start it. And it's a 1-year cohort where 12 classified professionals participate, and they get an orientation and they get some resources, and they're able to get away from their desk and participate and learn from different topics. I've seen so many changes in a lot of classified who start speaking up, like quiet people who now start speaking up in committees. And I've seen it being replicated in other community colleges. So if you don't have one, I encourage you to start looking into how to develop those, to attend both statewide, but also to develop professional development and leadership development opportunities in your own district is so important.
All right, thank you so much. And I want to move into another area that is really about the concept of upstander. So can you talk a little bit about what does that mean in terms of an upstander? Because some people may understand it upstander as bystander. What does that difference between an upstander and an ally? I thought maybe Cecil and Ebony, can you just address what is an upstander and how is that profile different from being an ally?
Cecil, you want to go first, or you want me?
You go ahead, Ebony.
Okay. Well, I don't really know much about those terms, if I'm being honest. I just feel like you either rock with that group or you don't. Like, I don't know. I don't know about talking about it and being like something separate and adjacent. Like, are you with it? Are you with it, or are you not? So I guess maybe what in general was some folks, that's where I stand with it. But the difference between the two could certainly be someone who speaks up and practices, right? So don't just say it in theory, because I think a lot of stuff is said in theory, but really in practice, it's not really done. And so from once being a classified professional to now, faculty, the fact that our classified professionals don't have the opportunity to teach within the district, right? So we have PD or workshops around, how to move up, but those opportunities aren't there. They're not embedded in the system. So if I do get my degrees and I want to enter the classroom, I can't keep my job and do it. I actually had to quit my job, in order to do it, which then puts my family at risk, right? My benefits and all of those things. So you're asking classified professionals to give up everything to continue to move up in the system. I think our administrators and faculty need to start speaking up about that. Academic Senate needs to include classified professional issues within Academic Senate and work together. And so to me, yes, it's just you rock with those folks, you listen to them, you speak when it's time to speak on their behalf. And that's, to me, that's certainly the difference. The other thing is, yes, also as faculty, we get ESU payments to do committees. I sit on this social justice and education conference at San Diego City College. And a lot of much of that committee is made up of classified professionals who come to a Friday meeting every other week, and they have to also do their desk job. So they're sitting there in a meeting trying to also, complete their workload. They get no reassigned time or payment. And from what I understand, there's no way to even give a stipend, even if we wanted to. That needs to be fixed. We know the California community colleges should no longer do that. Stop. Allow for ways to pay classified professionals for the work that they do on campus outside of their jobs. Pay them.
Yeah, so really quickly, I will say I first came across the term upstandard when I was working with the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Orlando, and they do upstander kind of education for middle school students for bullying. So for me, an upstander is different than a bystander, because a bystander implies inaction. You can stand there and watch, but an upstander is somebody who takes action. Right? So very similar to this concepts of allies, advocates, an upstander, right? It is not an identity that one possesses. It is an action that you take. So leverage that privilege, right? If you have the ability to speak up, speak up. If you have power that you can share, share, right? And so that for me, I think is how we can enhance, right, that upstander capacity, is doing a critical analysis of what we can bring to the table and what we can share with others to empower them.
And if you can change it, change it. Just change it. Don't do it because it's just what you've been doing. Change it.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier said than done. And I think that this is particularly challenging sometimes for classified professionals. And that's why I want to bring this topic up of upstander in terms of what that skills and capacity and what does that look like. Dina, I wonder if you can help us a little bit about what is one practice that maybe you have witnessed that will help our classified professionals to enhance their capacity to being an upstander.
Well, I have to just remind them, shared governance, sharing access and shared partnerships. Classified need to know that they have a voice. And I know it's hard. It's hard, especially if you're a victim of retaliation or any of that kind of stuff, or your workload is just really intense. But I want you to remember you're like the experts in the room. I had, 30 years of experience owning my own agency with 13 employees before I did marketing and communications for the district and the college. I bring a lot of experience. I'm the expert in the room, and I know that. But also, it's very important for our administrators to listen when we have an issue. Listen when we bring something to your table. Sometimes people are afraid to speak up because they think somebody's untouchable. Sometimes people think that their issues are being ignored, and they are. It's valid. So if an employee is bold enough to find their voice, listen and be proactive on their behalf. I think that's the best way to be an upstander. You guys are in a position of power, and you have the ability to move that needle by listening and also by being proactive. And I'm just going to do a really quick list to my fellow CPs. Okay, little recap. Join your Senate, get involved in shared governance, and if you feel that you are experiencing any kind of injustice or you witness it from somewhere else, don't be afraid to speak up, address any instance of abuse, keep a paper trail. There are leaders on campus who can help. Meet with them, explore your grievance process with HR, and find out what's in your HR file. You have the right to know what's being put in there. And if all else fails, file a complaint with the EEOC at eeoc.gov. It's easy to do, and they can help mediate a problem. That's if all else fails. But you do have resources. You have me, if nothing else. Email me. I'll help you. And one more thing. Watch the Lift webinars. It's really an awesome tool.
Okay, thank you for that plug. And you gave just a long list of advice. So that's where I'm going to end with the last part of our webinar today is let's give some very concrete tips and advice, suggestions for our classified professionals so that if they still have doubts about their ability to recognize it, as well as their skills and capacity to stand up and speak up and act when injustice and inequity that they experience or witness. So that was great. If you want to add anything to that, Dina.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, yes. I want my fellow CPs to remember you are the professional expert who contributes significantly to the success of our students and our institutions. You bring important repertoire of professional skills. You possess a wealth of institutional knowledge. You provide essential resources and critical support. And you work alongside faculty and administration in realizing the institution's mission. All right? At Moore Park College, part of our mission is creating an equitable and inclusive climate and eliminating injustice and racism. If you feel you are denied any of the tools or access you need to do your job, or you are made to feel like you do not matter, or if you or anybody you witness experiences injustice, racism, or inequity, address it in an email, speak it out, and stand up to it. You have rights that protect you. both as a victim and as an upstander. You do have resources that you can turn to. There are amazing people that can help, and there are dedicated leaders who have zero tolerance for injustice. You may be surprised, as David said earlier, you may be surprised at the level of support you actually have.
David,
Yeah, I think the main thing is a leader is not just one who has a title. So if you're attending this webinar, you're already in that pathway to being a leader, or you're already a leader. You don't need a title, you don't need position to have the mindset of a leader, to drive change and to speak out when that's needed. And so in being a leader, I would encourage you to build relationships, have conversations, build trusting relationships, increase your awareness of your institution, but also your rights. You have a right to be part of the conversation, and you have a lot of protections if you're facing injustice yourself. So increase that awareness so that you can help yourself, but also help others, and develop a vision of what kind of change you want to develop. And with those relationships that you're developing, start to develop that vision and cast it out in where you're at, and you'll start driving change. Just be patient with that.
great. Cecil and Ebony, I'm going to turn to you now. You can certainly add more advice for classified professionals, but I also want you to provide some advice to the administrators and faculty in ways that they can support classified professionals when it comes to injustice and inequity.
I'd say when you see the disparities there, do something about it. I know that, change is not always easy, but if it's for equity and we purport to be, equity, I don't know, Avengers or agents for change, right? All those things we call ourselves, DEI institutions, right? Like we put all these labels on things, but is it just, performative, right? Is it just to check a box because it sounds good? Do the actual work. If we purport to do these things. So what I would say to administrators and faculty, don't pretend like a classified professional issue is not your issue. It is. Our schools don't run without classified professionals. So if there's an issue with our classified professionals, we all have an issue. And we should see it that way, and we should begin to close those gaps. So I would encourage administrators and faculty and other folks on campus to do things when you can, intercede. Don't just sit back and say, well, that's just how things are. Make changes from the information you get and what you hear. Start at your campus and then take it to the district. Don't just leave it. You hear these things being said, and don't tell your classified professionals no, especially when the work is stemmed in equity and all of those things. Faculty often get told, okay, sure, you can try that. Let's let our classified professionals try things as well. Shift your mind about how you think about that role, how the role our classified professionals play, and act accordingly.
Yeah, I would end it with samesies, right? How you can't say that you're about student success, right? And equitable student success without being equitable success for faculty and staff and classified staff members in your institution. Because the way we treat our staff is the way our students receive the same service. So we have to do better in role modeling that behavior across the entire structure, right? So my advice to administrators and faculty is simple: be aware, pay attention, look. Take a look around. Who's not engaging? Who comes to work and leaves and doesn't do anything else, right? And when you see that happen, ask them, how's it going? Is there anything I can do to ensure that you are more successful? Sometimes it's just as simple as having that one-on-one conversation so that our folks who feel the most marginalized and invisible feel empowered to speak up.
Wonderful. I want to make sure that you have the opportunity, because we rushed a lot of the questions. Is there anything else anybody want to add for a final minute? Please jump in. I don't want to shortchange this very distinguished panel.
There is one thing, It's about shining a little more light our way. And that has to do with, public forums where administrators and faculty, we're often invited to these forums and these town halls and so forth. And what I want to invite our leadership to remember is that we bring diversity and creative expertise to the table. So when when there's a campus-wide presentation or something, allow us to be leaders with you in the front of the room. Shine a little more light our way.
Thank you. That's a great ending in terms of shining more light. And I hope that those of you who are serving in classified professionals, that you have garnered and have a little takeaway, and to know that there are a lot of us standing behind you, and we want others to shine lights on you so that we see the talent, we see the hard work, we see the dedication, and we also see the injustice and inequity, that we need to do something about it. Please, everybody, help me thank our wonderful panel today. I want to also thank the Chancellor's Office and our LIFT teams in joint planning and the execution of our today's webinar. Thank you very much. In the chat right here, hopefully it's here. In the chat, we have a link for the evaluation and feedback. We love hearing your feedback. Your comments have been quite valuable for us. So take a minute to fill those out. Your feedback has helped us develop these topics. Your feedback has helped us to continue to improve in the way that we serve and address your needs. So we appreciate it very much. It'll take a few minutes. And we hope that you'll continue to join our future webinars. Our next one is on Friday, June 16th. How can I develop professionally? That topic is especially designed for you, our classified professionals, but it's also generic enough that if you're not, you're also will benefit from it, and you don't want to miss that. So thank you again for our panelists for attending today, and see you all in June.